Today I am constructing a fisher box, but it would also be used for coon. I still would have to set this box because it's going to contain a conibear trap. It would have to be set in a waterway, but it is legal for me to make it an artificial cubby for it. Now there's regulations for it. You can see I have a really deep cut where the trap recesses way into the box. This is a 160. So the rule for this trap is, I believe the entranceway to the box has to be less than 50 inches square. So there's minimum sizes for it to be legal in my state. Some states don't have to worry about that. Some states can set 220s and bucket traps and stuff like that. I can't do that. So this trap is going to have to be recessed way back in the box. You can see here I have my that's a Bridger 160. So I was sizing it up to make sure that it will fit in there. These traps, the disadvantage to these is that it won't fit standard cut lumber. You have to custom cut the lumber, which is much easier for a table saw. If you have a table saw, you can cut the planks to your specific size easier. I cut these by hand just using a regular saw, hand saw. But woodworking fabrication is not my department. Metal fabrication is more my deal. But I have it together so that there's no room for anything to get around the edge of the trap. Now, like I said, I may have to put, this is because of the size of the trap, I have to measure it to get the exact dimensions of the inside of the box, but I think this will be just a hair over 50 square inches, and it's not going to be by much. It pretty much fits the trap perfectly. It's such a close fit that I had to actually notch the inside of the box here where my trigger is going to go to make sure that the trigger has enough room to be able to rise to go off, that it's not jamming against the roof of the box. But what I may have to do is put, this is a piece of offcut that I got from the same board. I may have to screw a piece of offcut into the box, into the gate, into the entranceway of the box like that, to reduce the square inch footage of the front of the box. But that way I can put my trap in, like lean it over it and then stand it up and then slide it back into the box. State law here, I believe, is you can see I have a pretty deep side cut on it, so the trap has to be recessed 7 inches from the front of the box. So I went an extra inch. I went 8 inches. This box is 24 inches long, so I went 8 inches into the back. Now I'll set this up pretty much like I have my Coon or have my mink boxes, except my trap is not recessed as far into the box as this. This is designed so that a dog can't stick his head in there, or a bear can't fit his head in there. Now, the 160 trap is, especially a double spring like that, it's powerful. It is powerful, and it will kill a fisher pretty quickly, and it will kill a coon really quickly as well. I'm not going to build too many of these. I can only tag one fisher a year. And that's also dependent on whether I find an area or not where I can check, relatively easily without having to drive 50 miles one way to see if I can find a fisher. There's an area around that's not too far from here. It's an area that's very large pine forests, and it's a very large acreage of pine forest. Not many people, a lot of open forest territory. It's got a lot of fire lanes in it. It's mostly pine trees, although there's some regular deciduous trees too, but it's mixed in. But it's a lot of woodland. So I'm hoping, I've heard rumors that there's fisher in that area. It's just a matter, I might put some trail cameras out and see if I can get a photograph of one. What I like about these two, one video I got a lot of help from, or one channel should I say, that I got a lot of ideas from, for trapping fisher in PA was a Port Royal Trapper. Those guys have good videos up on trapping, not just fisher, but bobcat as well. Because we have a very short season and we can only tag one fisher, a lot of guys won't use a lot of these boxes, of course, because this is a killer trap. So if you have an area where there might be more than one fisher, you don't want to put a lot of these out. Also, you're only going to be able to use this in a watercourse around a river or a stream, so it kind of limits your areas where you can use them. Now, I can use this on the farm because I have a creek on the farm where I could set this for coon as well. So it's not like it would be only be used for fisher. I plan to use it for coon too. But I only want to be able to trap one fisher, so I don't want to have three, you know, if I was that lucky. Fisher is not very prevalent in my area yet. In a few more years, I would say maybe. They seem to be expanding pretty well. They were reintroduced in PA quite a few years ago now. I think they trapped them from some of the New England states, probably from Vermont and New Hampshire, places like that. And then they reintroduced them into Pennsylvania. And they seem to be doing pretty well. They were pretty much trapped out years and years and years ago. Probably 100 years ago. They were just trapped to extinction. I think they like a lot of other fur bearers, they get a bad rap for things that they don't really do. But fisher is a super interesting animal. He's basically like a giant mink. He's of that family. He's of the weasel family. I think his closest relation in that family is the wolverine. So he's like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, a fisher, he's like a large mink. Some places they're called polecats. Their name changes depending on region, but he's a pretty cool animal. Lives in big, pine woods. They can eat squirrel, they can eat porcupine, they'll scavenge on carrion. They're not super trap shy as far as I know, so they'll approach a set pretty well. They like to skunky odors. I've seen like pine marten too, like skunky odors. So something like gusto. Bobcats seem to like skunky odors as well. I see guys use a lot of gusto on cubbies they use for bobcat. But back to Port Royal Trapper, what those guys are doing is they're pre-baiting cubbies, not necessarily with killer traps in them, but they'll use hollow logs and stuff. They'll put cubbies out on land that they intend to catch, where they think there's a fisher, or where they got camera pictures of fisher. And what they'll do is they'll set up a cubby and they'll bait it with squirrel or whatever bait they're going to use, and then they'll put a trail camera up on it, and then they'll watch it for a couple of weeks pre-season. So they're pre-baiting an area they're trying to attract that fisher to. And they do the same for bobcat, because our season for bobcat is very limited as well. In time, it's pretty limited, and you can also only trap one. You can't trap multiple cats. You can only trap one cat. That's your limit. Done. So what they do is they'll set cubbies out, and they'll pre-bait them, and then watch that cubby to see if they have a fisher or a bobcat visiting that cubby. And then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll use a step over cubby. As you can see, this one is open, so they'd put a bridge across it, so he has to jump in and out. So, and then they'll put a foothold trap right outside the front of it. So he'll either hit the trap as he's going to jump in, or he'll hit the trap as he comes to jump out. And they have pretty good success with it. So I thought that was a pretty clever idea. Especially when you're dealing with such a time constraint. I think the fisher season here, I'd have to check it, but I think it's probably only 2 weeks. It's not very long. And it's usually in the winter. Late winter. So yeah, we're going to make one of these boxes up and give it a try. Like I said, I'll probably use it for coon too. You can see I have the clear shot all the way through. What I'm going to use is I got some mesh for the back here. Mesh screening for the back we're going to put on it, and basically mask off the back so we can only get in on it from one way. Again, I will probably paint this as well so it's not bright white like this. This is again way before season, so like I did with from my float and my other boxes too. We'll get it so that it's well weathered before I have to put it out in the woods. Yeah, it's gonna be well seasoned. Here now. See if I can set this other spring by hand here. These springs are strong. I actually made a setter for setting these. Oh yeah. My hands are not as strong as they used to be. You'd almost want to be using safeties on these. That do not want to get your fingers caught in this. Set at the highest tension setting. I'll leave my safeties on the spring. So there's my trap set. So now if I bring this down, this should just about fit. I want it as tight as possible. I'm going to have it all the way back. Like I said, it has to be recessed so that the trap is 7 inches away. There we go. So now you see it just about fits. That's why I said I cut out the top of the box in, you know, on the top here where that spring sits, so that the dog can actually rise up without interfering with the roof. But yeah, you can see I have it set back. That's how far I have it back. But there's no room around it. So it's only going to take a slender animal that's going to be able to fit in that hole. Yeah, it's only going to take a slender animal. I'm pretty sure a coon will try to squeeze in that. I've seen coon squeeze into mink boxes, so it'll definitely take coon as well, especially around the water. It'll take a mink too. If the mink knocks the trigger, I'll probably set the trigger pretty stiff, but if he knocks that trigger, it's going to take a mink as well. This, of course, is way bigger than what I'd use for a mink box. I'll give you the dimensions at the front of it. The trap is probably 6.5 by 6.5. I'm gonna say is it from jaw to jaw. But the box spread here, okay, I got 8 and 1/8 of an inch that way, and I have 7.5 inches that way. So what I'm gonna have to do is, like I said, I'm gonna have to reduce the entranceway size. So if I put a little lat in on the bottom of it, that'll bring my size down. So if I go with that, now that's at 7 inches, and then my width is still the same. It's 8 and 1/8. So what I'll have to do is reduce it so it's below my 50 square inch minimum. Because to build the box tight enough to just have enough room for that trap, it's so restrictive. The 50 square inches is so restrictive that the trap wouldn't function properly, because you could push that trigger as hard as you want and it won't let the dog rise up off the top of the trap. So what I'll do is I'll build a little step here. So that way too, I don't have to use the conifer in it. I could use it as a cubby, as a baited cubby, and then have a foothold trap outside it as well. So double duty for that. I probably won't anchor this trap to the box. I'll anchor this trap to the ground. I'll have it so that I'll have it on a stake, or I'll have it on a cable, and I'll anchor it to the ground outside the box. So, but that's the general gist of it. Just have to make sure that it's legal. All right, let's finish it up and get the finished product done. Okay, after a little bit of modification, we're back. Here's my 160. Okay, here's the box. You can see I modified the entranceway to the box. I put 2 little lats in it. So now the final dimensions for my box are 6 by 8 inches, which gives me 48 inches square, which is 2 inches under square of my legal largest diameter. So that makes my box okay. And then, like I said, for me, I have to have the trap recessed at least 7 inches back into the box. Like I said, which reduces your incidental catch, but whatever is going to it's not going to catch an animal that's just going to pass by the box. He has to commit to go into the box to take the bait that's in the back. I did have to modify my cuts a little bit here because of how the springs are on this trap. I think my Duke, I tried the Duke trap in it too, and the Duke trap springs are a little flatter, but these springs are slightly offset. So to get the trap inside the box, I have to tilt it, and then tilt it in and then twist it back up. So I had to widen the slots here at the mouth. I left them the same diameter back there, so because once the trap stands up in there, it fits perfectly with just enough clearance for the trap to actually work. So to get it in, what I have to do is very carefully, without trapping my fingers. So I had to set the trap this way in the hole, and then slide it in under the bridge, and then set it all the way back to the back of my notch. Now, like I said before, I also recessed the notch. I'll show it to you on camera, but I recessed the top of it. I cut a little notch in the top board or the bottom board. If I want the trigger on the bottom, I can flip it around. But you can see now how the box or the holds the trap all the way back. So there's the view inside. See, I cut that little notch in there, so the animal can see all the way through. If I switch it around, I have the same mesh on the back here as I had on my mink box. Except with the mink box, I don't have the trap recessed as far, but you can see here where I put those little lats in it to reduce my entranceway area. But you can see inside the trap is like pretty much, it's real close. It's really close, as close as I could cut it to get that trap to fit. So the dimensions, and now I have a 6-inch here, 8 inches here. So that's, like I said, 48 square inches. The box is 2 foot long, and then I recessed it 8 inches down. So if I put the measuring tape in here and I measure to the very front of the trap, it's 7.5 inches there. That's 7.5 inches there. So I'm over the legal depth of how deep it has to be inside the box. But these traps are pretty lethal. They're pretty lethal. So Mr. Fisher, Mr. Coon comes along, goes into the box, and that's pretty much as far as he's gonna go. I don't even know if he'd be able to wrestle himself out of it, but as you can see, that is very effective. It actually, you can see where it like cut down into the timber. So these springs they're strong. Like I said, I had to build a setter. I had to build a setter for those springs because you can see where it actually indented the board. So it hits pretty hard. I mean, it's very humane. Put my tag on the back of the trap. So, or on the back of the box, I also have a tag on the trap as well. So I think that should work for us. Like I said, all I gotta do now is paint it. I did have to, like I said, I did have to make the slots here just a little bit wider so I could maneuver the spring, when I twist the spring around to get the trap in. So we'll see how it works come trapping season. I'll paint it camo. I'll paint it camouflage like I did with my mink boxes, and see how it goes. Like I said, I'm gonna test it too with Coon and see if it works. The limitation I have on this is I have to set it in a waterway. I can't use this in a dry land set. But fish are, of course, frequent water as well. Like any animal, of course, he has to get water at some point. It's only a matter of whether I can find an area where I find the fisher and the waterway together. Other than that, I'll be using it in for coon sets too. But yeah, we'll give it a go. I may also build some cubbies. I'm going to see if I can get some logs and hollow them out. or find some hollow logs that are cut out. That's a good way to go for that, for bait cubbies like that, and then just bridge them off. That way I can use a foothold trap outside of the cubby. But yeah, we'll give her a go and see how it works. Alright, I'll see you on the next one.